So why don't I go ahead and introduce our panelists. I'm just going to introduce by name and title only. There's all sorts of fabulous background on these people that you can look up and get to know them a little bit better. So Cindy Tamor is our superintendent. Hi, Cindy. Jason Merrill is the high school principal. We've got Joellen Baudet. She is a 5th grade teacher at the Hoover. We've got Matthew Rapucci. He's the high school music teacher. Sheila Gouch is the Special Education Parent Advisory Council Chair, which is a volunteer role that she has here in Melrose. She is also a director of a therapeutic day school outside of Melrose, so Sheila actually has the great perspective of an outside expert who's providing some knowledge here on the panel. And then Amy Swan, who's bringing kind of that parent volunteer voice. So she is a PTO and community volunteer. She's also on the board of the Bridge. So a nice kind of variety of people who are going to be weighing in. So, should we get started? Or do you all want to listen to me a little bit more? Should I rattle off like 10 more rules? I see nodding heads. That's a little worrisome. All right. So we're going to start off kind of big. I love this. It's like inverted pyramids. I think that's a great way to live your life. So we're going to start with kind of a broader, where are we now and what's at stake type of question. And I'm going to direct this question to Cindy. Cindy, this is actually a question that came in on one of the registration forms. So for many years, we've been told that the schools are going to fail without additional revenue, but our schools are thriving. Why won't the same continue to happen?
Thank you, Beth, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm
the AV expert, so just, I'm not, but I'll do what I can.
Is this working better?
Is that on?
Yeah, that one's working.
Is it on? Cindy, try.
Is it on?
Yeah, I think when I turn mine off, you don't get Rudolph interfering.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. We are thriving, and the people that you need to thank are also scattered across this room. And that is our incredibly dedicated educators, including our teachers, our principals, and our paraprofessionals. We have made cost efficiencies over the years in order to keep the focus on student learning. The number one rule in the district is we do not cut services, direct services to kids. So we'll do things like cut 3 administrators, which we did a few years ago, do away with printers in every classroom, which we did 2 years ago, find every unused cell phone in the district and turn that in. We've double dutied on a lot of things. So the idea here is education is changing. It is changing more rapidly than any time in history. We have a lot more work to do, but we're going to stay focused on kids. And everybody in this district has stepped up. Probably everybody here on this panel, my friends here, have taken on multiple responsibilities as well. Joellen runs an after-school running club with no charge to kids, no charge to the district. Matt wears multiple hats, youth band, jazz band, the marching band, lessons, has taken on extra class assignments as needed. So there are a lot of people in this district who have put our children first, and that has kept it together. There comes a tipping point where you can't do that anymore. And the tipping point, quite frankly, is twofold. Enrollment. As our enrollment rises, the district has an agreement that we will try to keep, we will make every reasonable effort to keep class size at 25 or below. We have violated that agreement in several places across the district, mainly at the middle school and the high school. And the other thing is, again, the rapid change. One of the stresses on the system is, as education changes, people need ongoing professional development. There are not enough hours in the day. So one of the stresses is we'll often pull teachers during the day, I have heard from some of you, and we put substitutes in your room. We can't get enough substitutes. So you have this domino effect. So what do you give up? Well, I'm not going to send people for professional development because I need to have them in the room. If I don't send them for professional development, they don't stay current. There are increasing mandates. We're currently rewriting the whole social studies curriculum because the state has come out with a new framework. They are right now reviewing the wellness curriculum. We should have a new wellness curriculum in about 12 to 18 months. Digital literacy and computer science, which was supposed to be a suggestion or something you wove into everything you did, is now a mandate. The expectation is that 30% of our high school students will graduate with a computer science course in the next year or two. So these are the stresses that keep building. And it becomes you reach a tipping point. And you have to make a choice. And that choice becomes that you strip back to only the essentials. And that's a decision the city has to make as to, are we going to try to provide our children with the range of opportunities and educational experiences that will make them competitive in a very rapidly changing world that is increasingly based on technology and information, or are we going to stick to just the basics?
Great. I'm gonna, can everyone hear me? I'm gonna take this off because I don't know about you, but I don't want to listen to this Rudolph sound for the rest of the night. So I'm gonna take one for the team and not use this. So Cindy, I'm just gonna ask you just a quick follow-up question. Just spend a minute or two on this because I want to allow the audience to weigh on this kind of broader vision topic. Is Melrose alone in facing the challenges that you just shared?
No, absolutely not. I'm very active at the regional and state level. I belong to a number of groups, and because of the work we're doing here and trying to do student-centered personalized learning, I'm involved in several other groups, including one that crosses New England. And we're all involved with the same thing. We're all struggling with the change in education. I can go off into my geek world, but the model of education most of us grew up with is no longer relevant to our kids or what their lives are going to be. There was a recent article, and I can't remember whether it was in Forbes or something else, that talked about by the year 2030, 80% of the jobs that our kids will go into do not exist today. And that's the world we're trying to prepare our children for. And that is a challenge that many schools are involved with. I'm involved with the League of Innovative Schools, MAPLE, which is a statewide organization, the New England Consortium, the Bar Foundation, Great Schools Partnership, a number of organizations that are looking at how schooling is changing and what do we have to do so that our children are better prepared for the future. So this is a stress we're all feeling. Quite frankly, if, as I tell my good friend who is in Burlington, who has more industry than I've ever seen in my life, if I had that in our backyard, we would not be having this conversation. But I think part of the conversation also is helping people understand how much education has changed. I often kid teachers that if you left the classroom 5 years ago, you could not come back in today. That's how quickly it has changed. And that's how much professional development we put our people through to stay current.
Okay, I want to open it up to the audience. Questions, just to kind of keep a little structure. Questions you have around kind of bigger vision. We're going to dive into classroom size and all sorts of other things around the high school and the middle school. Yeah, you want to start us off? And I think we're going to
have a question, I know, somewhat related, but I know we're looking at Melrose itself, trying to figure out what can we do with the budget within the town. Mm-hmm. What efforts are being made to sort of, if all these changes are going across district, across state, what kind of efforts are being done on the state level to try to rejigger the monies that are coming to the individual towns from the state?
Great question, a little complicated, and Mr. Broder is trying to hide in the background on that one.
I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. So there is a multi-year, you might have heard of the Foundation Budget Review Commission that was at Beacon Hill and made many recommendations about how the funding formula has to be revised. They came close last year and couldn't get to the finish line. The major areas that are detrimental to most districts are the rapid increase in health costs and the cost of special education, not because special education is rising, but because the original formula undercalculated it. There's also the additional impact of an increase in students needing English as a second language and what we call the disadvantaged student category, children who are on free and reduced lunch or in those type of disadvantage. So those parts of the formula have to be rejiggered, rethought through. It's approximately $1 billion difference between what is given and what is needed. Right now, there are competing versions of what should happen. We've run a scenario. There is a model with 4 different scenarios that towns have been given that we could apply. Basically, the impact on Melrose is not significant. It would probably, the best scenario that I've seen of the 4 scenarios would give us about another, I'm going off the top of my head, maybe $2.5–2.75 million, but we would have to also contribute almost the same amount to get that amount. All right, so, and right now, the way the proposal is run, depending on whether you're talking Beacon Hill or the governor does it over 7 years, and Beacon Hill does it over 4 or 5 years. So what superintendents have been told in the multiple meetings we've been in is do not count on anything until 2023 is the earliest.
You want me to follow up? It's up to you guys.
If you can do it quickly.
I can do it super quick.
Okay, go for it.
I don't know how to work this. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Forget about that. So, foundation budget comes from ed reform. Ed reform came about because of a lawsuit in 1993 about the way the state funds education. The basic premise behind the lawsuit was your zip code should not determine your access to a quality education. It was brought by a bunch of communities led by Brockton. And so the kind of the deal that was struck was we would dump, I shouldn't say dump, we'd pump a lot of money from the state into districts to equalize that, which meant communities that were not of means, shall we say, got a lot more money than communities that might not be able to, i.e. Brockton, Lawrence, Holyoke, Fall River, places like that. And it worked for a little while, but it has gotten out of whack for a couple of reasons, most of which the superintendent talked about. If we fix the formula, what we're really addressing are issues like achievement gap and the fact that the formula has gotten out of whack again, meaning once again, Lawrence, Holyoke, and Fall River and places like that are falling behind. So for example, the governor's proposal goes overwhelmingly to those communities with severe needs that are falling behind, where the special ed costs, the English language learners, dramatic changes, low-income folks, that all goes into that formula. So when we fix the formula, and under any one of these scenarios, the lion's share of that money is going to go to those communities in need. Brockton is talking about another lawsuit for that reason, because they have lost in the millions in terms of the delta between what an updated formula would give them and what they get right now. So it is all important work. Ultimately, will it inure to the benefit of Melrose? Yes, but on the scale that the superintendent talked about. In a world where we're talking about, again, a shift of $1 billion, Melrose is a maybe, best case scenario, $2.5 million community. And when you listen to all the data, you're going to hear about the relative funding of Melrose versus other communities and how much they put into ed. Keep in mind that this money won't change our relative position. The way we change our relative position is by investing our own money. Does that make sense? You can do this all day if you don't want to. Thank you.
So other questions that hit at kind of bigger vision related for, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question. So all the money that he just said goes to the schools that are in need, and we're saying we're not getting the money till 2023?
So anybody in the state won't see that money till 2023, probably. They'll begin to implement it incrementally, but nobody all of a sudden is jumping our budget next year.
But so he's saying though that the communities more in need are gonna get
Right.
money, and Melrose doesn't necessarily fall into that
Right.
bracket of in need?
Right, exactly. We're what is considered an 82.5 community, and what it means is that the expectation is that Melrose contribute at least 82.5% of the school budget.
Okay, so are you also saying that, so you're saying that we need to invest more into each student because education is growing and changing and it's rapid and so on and so on. So are we in agreement here that we need to spend more money per student, per child?
Yes.
But can you explain why, like Wakefield and Watertown, who have a higher per pupil spending, are actually doing worse than Melrose?
Because my people are more talented.
Oh, okay. So right there.
Because we've asked a lot of questions.
Well, no, I mean,
Come
she can
back.
end with that, but so you're telling me that right there alone means money does not buy success.
So I don't understand your factual question that you want to ask.
So you're equating, you said your students are amazing, and that per pupil spending in Watertown and Wakefield, which is higher, doesn't mean anything because your people are amazing, which means that because they're amazing, why are we here talking about an override?
And we will lose those amazing people. That's
Oh,
what-
really?
yeah, no.
Okay, fair enough.
What I'd like just to remind the audience, this is, your opinions matter, but you have to ask a question where everyone's going to benefit from the answer. So
They
please
also
try
have
and,
to have
please
their
try and
opinions
keep the opinions separate and just ask questions so we can all get educated. The point is for everybody in the audience to get educated. So try and dial down the opinions and just more question asking would be ideal. So there's a question in the back.
Hi, you mentioned, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
You mentioned investing in technology and the needs of supporting the kids and the whole education system when technology is growing. Can you just give us a nutshell of where the education department is thinking about what the technology needs and how we would grow our technology in schools? And how important that is versus just the academics without technology? I'm thinking about stuff that's happening on the West Coast where they're kind of moving away from.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
You can.
Hi, thanks. I'll try to make that a little shorter then. You mentioned technology in the classroom as being something that is important on your plate coming forward, even more important and is going to play into the economic piece. And I just wanted to hear from you briefly about what your plans are for growing technology and where you would be spending the money as far as technology goes in the classroom.
Okay. So please do not think of technology as mainly hardware. That's the most important thing. You're sitting in an area of this building in which we just invested a lot of money in technology. What you cannot see is upstairs behind those windows is a CAD lab, a brand new TV studio, a computer lab that is open to all the kids, a business lab. Over there is my graphics lab. There's 3 rooms over here that are used for personalized and independent learning that are all computerized with smart boards. We have been growing our number of Chromebooks. We've chosen to be a Chromebook community with Google. All exams in the state are now on computer. I don't have enough computers to give the exams starting next month, so we have to stagger it. But it's not just about the hardware. The computer is no different than having a pencil and a pen and paper. It's a tool for learning. But the world we live in, all our resources, all our research, all our information comes over technology. Our kids now do portfolios. They do not pass into us notebooks full of stuff. It's all online. If you're a junior at high school and you write a paper, you press send and you send it to your teacher, and he corrects it and gets the changes back to you all online in the cloud. But it's not just about that type of technology. Downstairs we have a makerspace, we have robotics that we want to grow out, we have other computational science courses that we need to grow out. I think everybody knows that you can't even go to the checkout counter without it being a computer. So everybody has to have an understanding of this. It may not be your chosen pathway. I wouldn't expect it to be every child's chosen pathway, but they have to have an understanding of it. But you also have to know that it comes with costs. We just looked at, I can't remember, but for us to have every child have an access to certain accounts, it would be $25 a child. For us to have certain software programs, it costs us anywhere from $2 a child to, again, $25 a child. All of that has costs attended to it. Mr. Ellis and I, who is the CIO of the city, we're trying to figure out what it would take us to get to a one-to-one. We're approximately about depending on the building, 2-to-1, 3-to-1 community. We can't do it right now. Because, and even if parents are, and we're trying a BYOD project this year, but then what we do is we underwrite the kids' access to certain programs. That's where a lot of those costs lie. So when you talk about money. But more importantly is for us for our kids to understand the role of information technology, the role of digital literacy, the role of computational science in the workplace and what it's going to be for their futures.
Can everybody hear me? Is this working? Hello? 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 Yes, you can hear me? Doesn't feel like it's on, but I'll trust you. So I hear that some of the folks in the back can't hear me, which is strange because I have such a loud mouth. I just want to make sure that really remind people why we're here tonight. It is not a debate. We are not here to convince each other of the way we feel about the override or funding in the schools. It's about asking questions and getting answers so that we all can walk away feeling educated. So I just ask if you have a question, let's ask the question, but it's not to kind of pin one of the panelists down and show that they've actually gone down a path. Ask a question and we'll move on. I want us to have this civil discourse and respectful kind of room as we kind of go through the evening. I'm going to switch gears if that's okay, and if we have other questions related to kind of the broader vision, we can circle back, but there's so many other kind of topics that you all have brought up, and I know that you all want to get to your questions, so I'm going to move it over to the elementary level. And I thought if we could start with you, Joellen. There's a question that's come in a few times now, so let's just kind of address it head on. It's the actual verbiage from one of the registration forms that was filled out. So what is the impact on rising average classroom sizes on the teacher and the students, and what's going to happen without paras? And Joellen, when you answer, because I'm not sure everyone in the room really understands what is classroom size, like what is an average classroom size and what is a paraprofessional?
So thank you for having me, appreciate it. I'll talk a little bit about class size and then kind of connect it to paras, if that's okay. So class size is actually how I got my start here at Hoover. I started 20 years ago, and my first day was November 29th, which is not a typical first day for a classroom teacher. 20 years ago, in 1999, the Hoover School had one third grade, and it had 26 students in it. And in 1999, that was unheard of, to have a group of 26 8-year-olds in one classroom. It was the biggest class. Parents were concerned, teachers were concerned, administration was concerned about having such a large class size. So after the first couple months of the school year, the school committee voted to split the third grade and hire an additional classroom teacher, and that's how I got my start on November 29th. As a 22-year-old, first-year teacher, let me tell you what it was like to have 13 kids in my class. Small groups were small. I had 3 kids at a time who would cycle around. And those kids, every single one of them, I was able to see and work with individually for every lesson, every day. 13 kids is amazing. The kind of feedback that they could get was personalized learning. The kids that needed extra help had one-on-one extra help with me for every lesson, for every day. The kids that were ready to extend had personal time with me every day for every lesson to challenge and go beyond the regular curriculum. And for the majority of the kids who were just plugging along every day, they still got individual time with me every day to make sure that nobody was slipping behind or falling through the cracks. That was 20 years ago. 20 years later, 26 kids in a class is not always unheard of. My daughter is a junior here at Melrose High, and there are 29 kids in her honors math class. As a junior in math, 29 kids. So what that looks like is a small group of 8. And I'm not able to see every student for every lesson every day. And the kids that need the extra help will have the extra help in a group of 8. And the kids that are ready for extension are more kind of independently working on projects. And there are days that go by and I feel bad when I leave at the end of the day to realize that I don't think I've had a personal conversation with every single one of my students. And that's a shame. So now 20 years have gone by and we're starting to have that conversation about class size again, and I think it's a good one to have because the experience I had as a first-year teacher with 13 kids, priceless. As far as paras go, I think Dr. Cobbs, I don't know if she's here tonight, did a great job at Tuesday's school committee meeting, kind of outlining all the many things that we ask our paraprofessionals to do. And I think it was mentioned also at the school committee meeting that back in years past, paras maybe were spending some time helping to photocopy or to laminate or to help glue and paste things for kids. Now, paras are used from everything for giving reading interventions to kids that have been identified as in need, or running a station in a small group center structure in a classroom. Paras may be that social emotional support for some students who are having some anxiety issues. Paras are also called on all the time to step in as the teacher when the teachers are called out of the classroom. So paras do just about everything that you could possibly imagine being needed within an individual classroom. To kind of put it as an analogy almost, if you can all imagine maybe what it would be like to have 25 5-year-olds over to your house, maybe for a birthday party. And you think, well, that's a lot of kids, but it's only a few hours and it will be fun and we'll be fine and everything will work out. But what if I told you that a couple of those kids have never been to a birthday party before, and the lights and sounds are a little overwhelming, and they're a little nervous about how to interact with the other kids, and maybe they are starting to withdraw, and you find them over in the corner kind of disengaged. And at the same time, you've got a couple of kids who are brand new to this country, and they don't speak fluent English, and they're trying to figure out how to play chutes and ladders with all the other kids, and I have no idea what a chute nor a ladder is. And then you've got a kid who's got a severe food allergy, and he's made his way over to the snack table. You're a little concerned about that. And maybe there's a child at the birthday party who's got some behavior challenges, and he's picked up the piñata stick, and you're a little concerned about what might happen with the piñata stick. And you've got a couple of kids who've been to a million birthday parties, and chutes and ladders, that's not cutting it for them. So, how long do you think it would be before you called in another mom, or you called in your spouse, you called in somebody to help you out? Because who are you supposed to deal with first? The kid with the peanut allergy who's about to partake in a cupcake you can't be sure is safe for him, or the kid with the piñata bat, or the students who are crying? Who do you deal with first? And that seems, very silly in birthday parties, but it's not that far off from what your child's classroom teacher is dealing with every single day. The difference is it's not chutes and ladders and piñatas, it's college and career readiness. And you could be the most talented, the most experienced, up on all the latest research, and with that number of kids, with that number of needs, you need another pair of hands.
Great. Let me just open it up to the audience, and then I want to circle back and ask Superintendent Seymour a follow-up question. But questions related to elementary schools, it doesn't have to be classroom size, it doesn't have to be paras, but questions related to the elementary schools as it ties back to funding. Who's got a question related to that?
I'm a little just unclear. It started off as elementary, but then it sounded like it went into middle school in terms of the number of students per teacher. Is that are there 25 students per teacher in the elementary school, or?
That's hard to answer. So the school committee has a policy to try to control class size, and it's often driven by enrollment. So I use kindergarten as the best example, but that's the most where we have the most control. So when you register in Melrose, you do your first 3 choices, and there's a system. If you need, if you have special needs or ESL, there's only 2 or 3 schools you'll get assigned to. And then you'll get assigned according to if you've got a sibling or if you have, and then it's proximity, and then it's parent choice. So I have an incoming class, I'm just making up the numbers right now. I have an incoming K of 300. So I know if I want to try to do, I only have 15 classes, so that gives me 20 kids to each class if I can do it. But what happens is I've got Roosevelt, Lincoln, and Hoover is my ESL kid school, so maybe there's a couple more kids that go there. I have some special programs at Lincoln and Roosevelt for special needs kids, so maybe a couple more kids go there. But we keep just trying to keep it as even as possible. So just using it as a theoretical. So maybe I start with 20 all the way around town, and then people move into town, and I try to go 21 all around town, and then I try to go 22 around town. But at some point, it doesn't come out as evenly as we would like. So I have some schools that right now, I looked at my numbers this morning, I have some classrooms that are at 25, and I have some classrooms that are at 20. But the goal of the school committee is to keep class sizes 25 or below. At the middle school and the high school, it's more difficult because it's electives, it's choice. And sometimes if you're running a singleton or, let's say, BC calculus, and I've got 30 kids who want it, I've yet to have a teacher say to me, no, you can't do that. So 30 kids will go into that class. So average is hard to pinpoint, but there is a goal of 25 or less.
Cindy, let me ask a quick follow-up question, because you were just talking about kindergartners, and then I'm going to have the audience weigh in with additional questions. Another question that's come up quite a bit in the questions that you all put in the registration forms is this ever-growing number of kindergartners. So say a little bit about the challenges behind that, and it also ties back to your opening statements around enrollment being one of the pressure points that you're feeling. So can you speak to that?
So when I first got here, I'm in my 7th year here, I had what we call a 13 strand. That means that at the elementary levels, I had 13 classes at each grade level, 13 Ks, 13 1s, 13 2s, and I think I even had a 12 strand at grades 4 and 5. And then I had 13 at all K through 5. And then all of a sudden I had a 14 at K, and then I had 13s. And then all of a sudden I had a couple of 15s, at K1, but I still had, the 13s. I'm now at a point where I have 16 Ks, 15 1s, 15 2s, 15 3s, and it keeps going up. At the same time, we've had a number of kids return to the high school, 9th grade, 10th grade, even as, January had a number of kids return. some kids return to the middle school who might have been in private, parochial, or charter. So we're having an influx of students, as well as more and more people finding this a desirable place to live. My first year here, I want to say off the top of my head, my first K registration might have been 276 kids. We closed pre-registration for kindergarten right before vacation. We had 308. I know that between now and August, I will have at least 30 more registrations for kindergarten. And that's the trend we've been on. We did 2 demographic studies. There is some variation between them because one uses birth rate and one uses a predictable cohort of Ks. You know, I look at them not as right or wrong, I look at them as a range. So when I look at them, you know, I'd have to pull out the papers off the top of my head, but let's say in 3 to 4 years, I'm looking, well, probably further out, probably 5, 6 years out, I'm looking at anywhere from having 4,300 to maybe 4,600. Again, I don't remember the exact numbers. I did my counts, I do my counts monthly. I was at, I think, just under 4,000 this week. So we have a number of people who find the city desirable and want their children to go here. Our obligation is to educate every child who comes to us, no matter what, and to find space for them.
Go ahead. Do you want a microphone?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
So what is the community actually doing to reach to this? I mean, I'm new to the community, right? Because I found Melrose a desirable place to live. And so the question is, what is the community doing to reach all these new people, right? Having like all these new students coming to kindergarten is actually an opportunity. So the question is, how can we, the people here, reach to the new people that are coming, right? So.
Are you asking how can we reach
Yeah,
out
so
to
how
the new
can this
people?
be, I mean, it was difficult actually to find that this was happening. So how can this be actually more publicized?
So is your thought that when we, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is your thought as we get bigger, does it become more challenging to engage people that are coming into the community? I just want to make sure I understand what question you want the panelists to react to.
Well, I want to react, the question is basically how we, the people that are here, could actually spread the word, right? Spread the message that something is happening in the community and we need to take an action on it. I don't think it's completely like out there.
Yeah. Okay. And that's probably something that Kim and her team can take up as an action item.
Yeah,
for
I'd be
sure.
happy to chat with you about that afterwards.
Yep.
I think there's some interesting ideas there. Thank you for that.
Other questions around, just trying to go topic by topic, elementary school, classroom sizes, paraprofessionals, things that we want to touch on? Go ahead.
How many kindergarten paraprofessionals are there now? And if we remove 9 if the override doesn't pass, how many would be left?
So
Zero.
I want to, Greg, who's going to respond to that? Is that Cindy? Yeah, can you just repeat the question? So
The question was, how many kindergarten paras do you have now, and if you remove them, what you have left? So first of all, let me make the distinction. There are special education paras that are driven by kids' individualized education plans, and there are K paras who are general ed paras. So when we lost the para grant a couple of years ago, we didn't lose it, the state eliminated it. At that point, we had 1 para per classroom. We were able to craft a plan where we had 1 para for every 2 classrooms. So right now, I actually have, because of the way the classrooms are spread around town, I have 9 K paras, and those are the ones that are on option B.
And those are general ed.
Those are general ed paras.
Cindy, I've got another question for you that came in, again, on the registration forms, and this one has to do with instructional supplies. And it's also a good reminder that there are printed copies of the A and B budget, so if you don't have a copy of that, Karen or someone else on the Knowledge Education Foundation can make sure you have a copy. Just wanted to make sure you had a quick reference at your disposal. So the question is that Budget A shows $425,000 in instructional supplies. What is that referring to, and what happens if we don't have those funds?
So somebody had asked an earlier question about how we managed to keep doing well. Well, we cut our supplies. We've repeatedly cut our supplies. We've cut our textbook line. Basically, as I always refer to it, as moving the P around the table under the shelves. So our art supplies, I believe, are down to $6 per student at the elementary school. We freeze the budget mid-year, and that means buying no more paper. The freeze went in, I think, February 1st. When we do have paper, my teachers make lots of copies of stuff. We have a lot of consumables in K-1-2. It's just the nature of their educational materials. So that's been a struggle. We stagger when we buy books or replace books. Conversation with the biology teacher today telling me I may need new books. So that's what we have been doing. So we have a little bit of catch up to be doing. And we would be buying some materials. The other thing is when you add a class each year, that class needs books. So if I bought enough materials for 13 grade 1s 3-4 years ago, and I now have 15 grade 1s, I've had to shift money from one pot to another to buy the materials for those 2 more grade 1s. If I have 16 grade 1s next year, because I currently have 16 Ks, I have to find the money to buy the materials for that 16th K. So the $450,000 would go to a lot of those costs. The other thing is we ask kids sometimes to supply some of their own supplies. Matt is sitting here besides me going, they buy their own sheet music. In photo, last year we were able to do away with the fee for photography class. That request is back on the table, $85 per student. And if they could at least pay a $35 fee, that would help. It's those type of choices we've made to keep doing what we're doing.
So once again, I'm going to keep us moving, but if you have an elementary related question and you didn't get to ask it, we might have time at the end, or we can make sure that our team from the Knowledge Education Foundation connects with you. I'm going to get us focused on the middle school and the high school. So on the panel is Jason Merrill, who's kind of running cover for both, but I think Mr. Parsons is here. Are you here? There you are. Hello. So we may ask you to comment on something. If you think you can add more context to what Jason has to say, that would be fantastic. So, so a question that came off of the registration form again. Just going to read it verbatim. My son has always been a solid student, but this year he's suffering because of the shared 7th, 8th grade team model. Will the middle school be forced to move to more shared teams?
With budget B, yes, potentially. So I would start with the middle school by saying back in the late 80s, Joe Ellen and I would have been both students at the Hoover School at the time, probably in the spring of '89. The community and the school district made a decision to follow along with best practice across the Commonwealth and the country, I assume, to move towards a middle school model. In that fall, we entered as 7th and 6th graders in the new middle school, and that wasn't
7 and 6.
So that wasn't because there was a new building built. That was the old building. That was because it was what was best for kids. So they moved to a middle school model, which middle school model is set up in town or city like Melrose with 3 teams, and some smaller communities, there might be 2. But it's the opportunity for there to be a team of teachers, one from each discipline, that can kind of wrap around a group of about 75 or so kids and really build relationships, all get to know them, be able to do some interdisciplinary work, to common plan together, to get to know their kids, and kind of keep appropriate class size. With budget B, potentially you're scheduling kids at the middle school like they're high school students, and just splitting up the teachers by the discipline and just scheduling a 6th grader with any English teacher and a 7th grader with 7th grade English with any teacher. Unfortunately, due to increased enrollment and budget restraints over the last year or 2, we've seen a little bit about what that model looks like by having to de-team a little bit in the 8th grade and having some teachers for the first time maybe teaching 7th and 8th grade at the same time, which is new, and also having some kids be on a team for some of the day and then off the team, and really just not getting that same support. So I'm certainly not surprised to see questions and concerns from parents in regard to that.
Great, and I would love to ask, not to put you on the spot, Mr. Parsons, but if there was any additional, and if there's a microphone, Karen, if you want to just, he's got it. Any newer, hello, we can hear you. Any new or different information beyond what Mr. Merrill has shared that you think would benefit the audience?
No, not really. I'll stand so you can all see me. Hello, good evening. Happy to be here and engage in this discussion with all of you. If you have a middle school student currently in the building, I'm sure you've heard stories about our blended hybrid team. So what Mr. Merrill was describing is kind of happening now, where ideally we want an environment that's safe for our incoming 6th graders especially, because we've all been there. We know that middle school is a scary time, and the teams provide a nice safe space for our kids, especially when they enter in the 6th grade. And if we remove that, which we kind of have a little bit right now in the 7th grade and the 8th grade, we kind of remove that safe space, and then we lose our focus around building relationships and focusing on providing students with opportunities to interact in a small, safe space versus having to navigate this really large chasm that can be our middle school if they have to go to different places around the building to attend classes. So really, the middle school model and the teaming model is so important because it provides our teachers an opportunity to really focus on social pragmatics, building relationships, and focusing on the non-tangible skills, not content related, but the non-tangible skills that will benefit them throughout their school career and eventually when they get into the working world. And if we remove that from the possibility, then I think our kids are going to be at a disadvantage because they're going to be forced to kind of navigate and build relationships on their own without that safe foundation of the team.
Thank you for chiming in. So before I go back to, before I ask Mr. Merrill some questions about the high school, questions about the middle school. Yes?
I'm a little out of the loop with the middle school in Melrose right now. So how many teams are there currently? Can I just project?
There were, traditionally, we would have 3 teams for each
3
grade.
teams for each grade, and what is there now?
I believe the 7th and 8th grade,
We eliminated one whole team. We laid off 4 people last year and eliminated one whole team.
So my question then is there any consideration or possibility for 5th grade to move to the middle school model because middle school teachers are licensed 5 through 8?
We have no space. At this, may I thank you?
So that was considered a few years ago when we first tackled our space problem and we ended up doing the modules. We're out of space. We're going to be out of space at the, we refer to this as the secondary campus. So the approach we take up here is this is shared space, shared staff whenever we can share staff. And the kids move between the 2 buildings. There's kids who come over to the high school for courses, high school kids go over to the middle school for facilities. So we're predicting that probably 22, 23, 23, 24, we're going to need more space up here because of the growing population. At that time, my offices are up here, and the consideration will have to be to take my offices out of here to claim that space. So we don't have the space to bring up what will eventually be about 310, 320 fifth graders.
Questions, other questions for, related to the middle school? Over here, I'm not missing any hands, am I? Heather?
Can we get the mic? Yeah. People in the back need trouble hearing. Thank you.
Heather?
Have you seen any data and I guess things that have students or teachers concerned about the deteaming and I guess downfall of that? Like, has it been bad?
I don't think it's been bad. The only data that I have is anecdotal data, and that maybe there's been more anxiety
with our hybrid team. But are you referring to like sort of performance type data? No, I haven't seen any data like that. I mean, we're about to enter testing season, so next year we may have a better handle on that. But I think it really speaks to the dedication and commitment of the teachers that have been involved in that hybrid team. We spent a lot of time and a lot of thought went into how we were going to make this work and it have the least impact on kids on their day-to-day. So the teams were chosen really for a purpose. That will look very different next year. We won't have much of a choice on how that deteaming works, and so we may have more data then.
Great. I'm going to turn it back to you, Mr. Merrill, and kind of zero in on the high school. So a couple of questions that came in through the registration process, but would love to get just a broader view of what do you think the impact is of this A versus B budget on Melrose High School. Is our accreditation at risk was a question that actually came in.
I mean, right off the top, the accreditation's at risk because we won't move forward with it. It just simply will be a budget cut. So just to fund that will be a budget cut. We won't move forward with it. We won't be unaccredited or accredited either way. I think staffing and enrollment is the biggest for us. And with budget A adding 4 teachers versus budget B losing potentially 2 teachers, just in the 6 years I've been here, we've added over 100 students. We've been able to add 1 teacher during that time. We've tried to add additional teachers over the course of those years and not been able to. But I think we've seen such an increase in the enrollment, which in turn is an increase in class size, obviously. We've tried to be creative and done some things. I'm ashamed to say we've created some opportunities, not because it's necessarily best for kids, but because it will help us decrease class size due to an increased enrollment without any staff addition. So I think that's the biggest for us. I think some of the people on there that are potentially cut are academic facilitator, which is at both the high school and middle school, someone who's not necessarily teaching a class, but assisting teachers and students all day. Everything from digital literacy, working with every freshman seminar class, blended learning, online learning, supplementing traditional curriculum and coursework. Rolled out student portfolios to all 9th graders this year, a way for them to kind of start to keep track of their own work and decide what they want to display as their best pieces of work, research and writing. I think that's a big piece, having those folks that are there to assist teachers teaching and help get the best out of their students. I think it's some of the smaller things that add up. Hall monitors, safety of the building, having people in the building, that are monitoring what's going on. When they're not here, that means I'm not in a classroom helping a teacher. I'm not having a conversation with the kid. I'm signing people in at the front door. That's the difference. I think some of the other differences, you're not going to have someone in the Learning Commons. Kids aren't going to be in here during the day. They're not going to be able to come in here after school. Probably the same to be said for the middle school library. So some of those supports, I think, it adds up and plays a very instrumental effect on the day-to-day operations of the school and the success we're looking for. But I think staffing is huge, because one of the things we pride ourselves in is the opportunities and experiences for kids, the wide range of classes that we offer on both ends. We're one of the first schools in Massachusetts to offer AP seminar and AP research, which is part of the capstone diploma program. And on the other end, we're able to offer furniture, graphic design, fashion design for the first time this year. We're adding another AP computer science course next year for a different group of students. And a lot of those are at risk. I mean, being able to offer AP Physics C, which is potentially the hardest course in high school, that's at risk because class sizes are big enough, and we're going to need to use that teacher that period to teach a big load of 25 plus. We can't have them in a classroom with the 12 kids that are eligible for that class. So scheduling could look a lot different for our kids next year, unfortunately. A lot of great opportunities that may not be there for them.
Kind of as a segue, and then I want to open it up to the audience around the high school. Would love to hear from you, Mr. Rapucci, around the arts program. So just understanding the programs that are in place now, maybe just give us a little color, because I'm sure there's not a lot of high school parents in the room, or there's former high school parents whose kids weren't in the arts like mine. Tell us a little bit about the arts that are in place now and what's at risk if the funding doesn't come through.
The arts in the Melrose Public Schools, I think, are a reflection of the arts in Melrose. As the band director and content facilitator for music, I also play in the Melrose Symphony. I'm very connected to a lot of the people involved in the arts in the city, and I think that we value the arts very dearly here in Melrose. And so we have a great collection of programs, which actually the first thing I want to acknowledge is that in this budget cut, it could be a lot worse for us. If you look at it, there's no art classes being cut. High school band and orchestra and chorus are not being cut. And you might be saying, why are you saying all of this? But it's for me to just acknowledge that in a time like this, we could be cutting these things, and there are moves being made to minimize the impacts to the arts, which I think is extremely valuable and courageous. It'd be easy to just cut these things, so it's worth acknowledging that. When you look at what we have, we've grown the programs a lot in the past several years. The band and the orchestra program has been a primary focus in terms of instrumental music for Mr. Miller and myself. The numbers right now, if you look at the high school band and orchestra, they're not huge, but if you look at the numbers coming up, which is a theme right now, we are trying to build the well, or dig the well before we need it. We can't wait till it gets here. It could be kindergarten, it could be band. So grades 5 through 8 right now in the band program, there's 188 kids. So that, we don't think that all of those kids will make it to high school, but I think based on our current retention rate, it's easy to say we'll have at least 60% of those kids, which is over 100. And so the point being there that these numbers are not an accident. And this goes to a bigger point I have about how we do things here in Melrose. Some people ask, how do you do it if you don't have a lot, this money, or you're doing it like this? And I think that I've been involved with a lot of decisions that the superintendent has made behind the scenes and we've had to talk it out, because she doesn't, when we started here, I give her a lot of credit, she does not understand anything about music, to the point that we sort of made it a joke. Which you'll all find out about soon. But this is to me, in my view on this whole topic, there's so much, it's understanding the philosophy behind small moves. And this is a kind of conversation that Superintendent and I have had over many years. For example, we wouldn't have 188 kids in that 4-year span if we didn't really address the way that we do the elementary lesson program. And nitpick it to the point of she wanted to kill me because I was like, well, we can't do this and this and this, and she's ready to, very frustrated. She has more important things to talk about, or, time is of the essence with her, and it's very difficult, but we had those conversations, and I know for a fact that this happens all over the place. And so the moral of this story is 6 or 7 years ago, she said, Matt, how do we build the band program? Okay, so here's your opportunity. Tell me what to do and what will work. And we made maybe 2 or 3 small little moves that had large impact, and you might not think it would do anything. And then 7 years later, we have 188 kids from grades 5 to 8. So what are some of those moves that we made? Well, we absolutely, no matter what, stuck to the small group lesson format. So what? So what? Well, that allows us to give the individual attention that we need to kids if the groups are of a certain size. And even within that, it allows us to tailor, okay, beginner groups, we try to keep them all the same instrument, try to keep the number at a certain amount, and then as they get older and they get more skilled, now we can put them into a slightly bigger group. We can mix the instrumentation, which allows us to make the schedule work, which was a major thing. We're pulling kids out of class. So let me get this straight. We're in a district where we're trying to fix our data around grades and all those stats. We all know what that means. And you want me to let you take kids out of class? Yeah, that's because we think that this is going to enhance the kind of skills that they need in terms of working together, problem solving, the kind of just processing. They're basically getting more one-on-one time with an adult where they have to problem solve, they have to think, and then that develops them in a certain way. So she could say, I think that's garbage. I think you're selling me snake oil. And you could say that, and then tip the other way.
So Mr. Rapucci, can I just interrupt just for a second? So if I could just ask for you to zero in on, imagine we go down the path of the cuts, just in a factual way, what's at risk?
So if you look at it quickly, and so as I noted, we are thankful that it's not cutting whole programs. The biggest thing that happens for us is we lose the 3rd grade elementary lesson program, which didn't exist before, so we would still have a band and orchestra program. We think it would affect numbers a bit as we try to grow the program. Again, we know this is a valued program in the community, so we're not looking to hurt it. But the hidden hurt for us is the content facilitator positions for all disciplines will be got rid of. So we don't currently have a fine arts director. We have a director of global education who does a fantastic job, but then there's 2 people, me and Anne-Marie Melito. She's the art content facilitator. So we go to those disciplines, and then there's also global language content facilitators, and this team of people kind of makes it work. If you get rid of the content facilitators, all of the work that we do in art and music is going to kind of just float there, and I think that we will maintain, but then it gets chipped away. And then with the budget cut, we won't have as much money to buy the supplies each year. And so to me, I think it's sort of going to be a slow falling back. And so I think 3-4 years from now, I think you're going to see the opposite effect of what you saw with the growth. You make 1-2 small moves 7 years ago, 188 kids. I think you make this move for us now, it doesn't look well, they didn't cut any actual programs. When you kind of chop our legs off with these couple small moves, no content facilitator, we don't have as much money to buy supplies, music. I think over a 3-4 year, I think you just see it go backwards. So I think that's not good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, folks in the audience, questions around the middle school or the high school? Yeah.
I just have a question on the youth band, because on the budget sheet here, it says eliminate youth band and youth orchestra. But I think, I'm looking for clarification what I heard you say.
I think I just left that out. You're right. And so that's.
You said the 3rd grade.
So I left out what you said, you're right. So we would cut the lessons out of the 3rd grade, and we would also cut the youth band and the youth orchestra. So the power of those groups, again, people saying, how have you been successful with what you have? There's key pieces that sometimes are very inexpensive. So youth band and youth orchestra, you don't have to hire a whole new teacher, it's not a whole new program. Me and Mr. Miller and myself do that after school. And the power of having all the kids from across the district come together and be grades 4 through 12 in one group. It's 4 elementary school kids. That's the level of the group. But we have middle school and high school kids who play with them, and the mentoring that goes on there accelerates their learning so that then when they come to middle school, they're a little further along. Now, not everyone does this. So another one of our tricks is we train kids to teach kids. I have, in the middle school band, there's 100 kids. It's broken down 25 and 1, 40 something, and in mid-40s for 7 and 8, 6 and 7. I cannot see every single one of those kids personally, every single class. We sort of have like a group model where we run them through things and then give them, and then I see who I can see. But the youth band and youth orchestra is one of our tricks, where then the kids who might need some extra help can come there, sit with older kids. I can give them a little more attention because of the level of the music. Again, teacher tricks to do that. And those tricks are being done by teachers all across the district. We share our methods. Like there's a lot of teachers that I'm colleagues with that we share our passion for doing the most we can with not a lot.
I'm going to jump in just to keep us moving, but thank you for that. Any other questions related to the high school or the middle school? So I'd like to move, okay, go ahead. We'll take your question, and then I think I'm going to keep us moving after that, just because we have a bunch of other topics to get to.
Just a clarification, if the override does not pass, how many additional teams are we going to lose from the middle school? I know you mentioned that this last year we had to eliminate one of the teams. How many teams would be eliminated if the override doesn't pass?
So in the proposal is 2 more teachers. So that's in effect a half a team. So we would have to I would have to work with Mr. Parsons and the directors to decide what that would play out as. The other thing that is involved there is in eliminating 6th grade foreign language. We do introduction to foreign language. The kids rotate through it. And one of the, along with the music and art in Melrose, global language is one of our prides. We have 5 languages at the middle school, 5 languages at the high school. We were one of the first districts in the state to use the seal of biliteracy, which now the governor touts as this great thing everybody should have. So we would have to eliminate 6th grade foreign language as well, and that would also impact how we think about teaming and where we can keep somebody and where we can't keep somebody.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move us on to a topic that we're calling student support. I'm going to look to Sheila to kind of enlighten us. So Sheila, you've got this great background on the piano that you're not part of the Melrose Public Schools. You play this volunteer role, but you are a director at a school that's outside of Melrose, so some really interesting outside expertise here. So given your background as both an educator and an involved parent, I think it would be beneficial for the audience if you could take a minute and tell us what we mean by a multi-tiered support system, how it works today in Melrose, and what's at risk if we no longer have something to the extent we have it today.
Sure. So I am the chair of the Special Ed Parents Advisory Council, and I'm also the director of a therapeutic day school. So the students I service are the students who can't access the curriculum in their public school setting and need additional supports, and they're going to go off to a private or a public day school. I also am a parent of 2 children in Melrose Public Schools, both of whom have been out of district place because of their learning needs. So I am passionate about making sure all learners are included in their home communities. And to that end, I've kind of focused a lot on the multi-tiered support system and kind of what that means globally. Superintendent Tamor spoke a little bit about how education has changed, and I think that's a really important part, and that's where multi-tiered support system actually came from. Was over the last 45 years, we've gotten a lot more state and federal mandates that schools are required to observe, and those mandates are largely unfunded, and it goes from just, when I was in school, it was reading, writing, arithmetic, and now we are educating the whole child. So that's social emotional learning, that's academic, that's physical, that's health and safety. So one of the ways the Department of Education responded to all those mandates was to create these really innovative and creative tools for educators to use to make sure that we're catching all learners. So the multi-tiered support system came out of those mandates. And basically what it is it's a universal screening tool. It's tiers of instruction. So it's, if you think of it as a pyramid, the first tier is your general education, where all students are being serviced. And it's a data-driven instruction model where educators are constantly assessing for need of students. So it means all learners get the support that they may need at any given time. And it might be support and enhancement. It might be enhancement of services for those students who are more advanced, might get that blended learning or the independent instruction. It also might be that students are caught and for maybe some lagging skills that they might have. So everyone is considered in tier 1. And then as educators observe and maybe catch a student who might need some extra reading support in 2nd grade, they're going to push in the general education setting. So students don't need to be in special ed to receive these services. These are services that are available to all learners. If a student is caught in that tier 1 and they realize, so for an example, reading assessments are done at the elementary level on all students. And if they're done and a student is caught in 1st grade and needs some extra support, you're going to have some of those paras and those instructional support teachers pushing in and giving that reading support. So they go up to tier 2. So it's like a pyramid of support. So there's tier 1, tier 2 is supplemental support, and then tier 3 is even more support. So you might do one-to-one instruction, or you might have different services up there. But the idea is that students move fluidly between these 3 tiers, and all students are included. And the idea behind it is really that we're also supporting finding students who might need special education services, but the special ed is actually also in all of those 3 tiers. So the idea is MTSS actually includes it encompasses everything that it's best practice for any school district now. And Melrose uses it pretty significantly. So when we talk about why, in a lot of ways, when we talk about why is Melrose, kind of better than some of these other communities, I might argue it's because they use MTSS really well. The majority of students are kept in the general ed setting. So Melrose has, I think, a 75% inclusion. Students are staying in their general education setting. So some examples of MTSS might be just in-class support, reading assessments, the middle schoolers going to the high school for math classes, the ECC having early detection, internships for seniors in high school. So it's really significant because it impacts all of our learners, and Melrose has basically all of the services. So there's, I'm trying to organize my thoughts. The idea is that the professional development that superintendent spoke about is basically what all of these unfunded mandates are basically saying. We need to be able to support all these learners, and so all of this professional development. So Melrose has included collaborative problem solving, restorative practice, universal design for learning. These are all kind of best practices that other districts use as well, and Melrose does it seemingly very well. So.
Great. I'm going to ask Superintendent Seymour a follow-up question, and would love to see if there's a question from the audience around this idea of student support. So thinking about the impact of Budget B, again referring to the handout and what you've probably seen in other places, on our ability to identify and assist students who need some support. Can you speak to what that impact might entail?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Sheila. She's been a great partner on this, and always willing to call me out when she thinks the district is short on servicing some kids. Let me give you an example. Title I is a federal grant in which disadvantaged children are given additional services so that the achievement gap is closed. We do not have a large Title I grant or a large Title I population, and I won't bore you with the details of how it's determined. But when 6-7 years ago, we had only 2 schools that were eligible for Title I tutors, and I come from a background that's general ed, alternative ed, special ed, and I had done some early work. Before you had MTSS, we had what was called RTI, and I had done some early work in that field. And it was very important to me that every building had help for kids, no matter who they were. Again, it's part of my core belief system that we shouldn't have to wait for a child to be referred to special education in order to get service. So we managed, again, finagling with the budget, looking at our para budget, looking at some other things that we had going on, and how could we squeeze out more money. And we created this position called an instructional interventionist. I wanted every school to have at least one either Title I tutor or instructional interventionist, so that any kid who was identified through the data work we do could immediately get help. We are at that point. Every one of my buildings has at least one of these people. My bigger buildings have 2. So again, the idea is you get in there fast with targeted supports. The student never misses what's going on in the gen ed population. We never remove them from that. That's important. But they're getting some extra help. So it's like you got the extra scoop of ice cream. This is at risk because the interventionists come out of the school budget. The Title I budget, which has gone cut repeatedly over the years, but that is a federal grant. It does not impact our budget in that way, but the interventionists are at risk. So that is one way that it can impact. Another way, another choice that we made, and again, this goes to how many teachers do we have, class size, choices we make. As kids went up to the middle school, we made a decision at the middle school, all right, how do we do this at the middle school? But middle schools are very different because they are classes. You have X number of periods a day, you have X number of classes. So we created what we call A block. And in A block, we have math lab, we have writing lab, we have, some reading help. And again, we collect a lot of data. We do what we call beginning of year, middle of year, end of year data so that we're tracking kids' progress. We meet on that data repeatedly, which the instructional coaches, who are also at risk in Budget B, lead these meetings, help teachers think about how do you help a kid, what interventions are needed, what else can we do to help you as a teacher be more effective. So at the middle school, we have the A block, and we again use the data, and we move kids in and out of A block classes to get the supports they need. At the high school, I did something that probably is semi-legal. My philosophy being, if a kid needs help, a kid needs help. And why do you have to qualify for SPED in order to get special education to get help? So we run some classes here at the high school, learning centers, things like that. The kids sometimes float in and out of general ed kids to get some extra help. We also built out Flex Block with a lot of support from staff who were willing to take the leap with us, so that we have built into our schedules time for kids to go see a teacher and get some remediation or reinstruction and do that. So again, a lot of that is at risk because a lot of it is dependent on bodies, having enough people involved and enough people available.
Very thorough, thank you. So questions about student support, way in the back.
I don't know if it falls in line with this, but
Let's, she's getting your microphone. Yep.
What is the ideal class size for an AP English class in high school?
Mr. Merrill loves your question. He's not going to like my answer. Because my answer could get very technical. It depends on a lot of things. You know, if you do research and you read Hattie's research on effect, you know, instructional effect, ultimately the most effective thing for any child is, outside of a supportive home, is a well-trained teacher. That is probably the most impactful thing. But to Joellen's point, the ability, because the model has changed, because it's not stand and deliver, because we do so much student-centered learning, I would say an AP high school class with probably about 20 kids would be ideal. That makes it more manageable for the type of work we do. The other piece, of course, is the AP English has a tremendous amount of reading and writing and correcting, and that's impactful as well.
And what size are we at now?
They could be anywhere between, they might be a lower one, but they've risen up to 30 and 31. Some of our AP classes are higher end classes. But I would also argue that the number 25 in the contract, which is extremely, extremely hard to get to, that wasn't just someone's favorite number. I mean, that was kind of thoughtful. So, I mean, we'd be much more comfortable with class sizes around 24. But I would also just say that's what we're shooting for in every class, not just AP English or AP classes, but regardless of the leveling of the course. Or, of course, there's a lot of reading on the teacher's behalf in certain courses like AP English, but it's also just to piggyback on what the superintendent said, the demands of all the staff throughout the district, just in an ever-changing world of education and really pushing to be at the forefront of that, is a lot on anyone. And I think the thing we all have to remember at the middle school and high school is that class size, when they go from the average of 24 to the average of 28, might not seem like a big deal for one class, but when you add up all of the classes that teacher teaches, if it's an every other day class, you can add that up twice because it's meeting that many kids every other day. You're talking about an extra 24 or so students on a daily basis that they're preparing for, correcting their work, giving feedback to, corresponding with. I mean, I receive dozens of emails a day from students. I can only imagine the amount of emails and communication that's going on between every one of our teachers and their students just looking for feedback and having questions. So that tends to add up. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the answer.
Yeah. And go ahead.
My next question was, what is the ideal size of a kindergarten classroom? And I'd love to hear from a kindergarten teacher.
I'm going to pass that over, and I think on behalf of any educator up here, there's probably at least, I've counted at least 24 or so teachers in the audience tonight, so just want to say thank you for being here. Very proud to work with all of you.
So I think ideal would be between 18 to 20. And, you know, as Mr. Melrose mentioned and as the superintendent mentioned, the, 25 that's listed in the contract is hard to manage. So having 18 to 20 students in a classroom, and remember these are 5-year-olds with their various needs, is even harder to come by. And needing to tie their shoes and wipe their noses and comfort them when they're goldfish dies.
So back to student support. Questions around student support? Yes. And I think we need mics up here, yeah.
Hi. Looking at the budget, these line items, so these kind of cuts, they look all mainly aimed at regular ed, and have all mentioned the effects that they would hit in regular ed. My question is for Sheila, any of you really, what, if any, effects would student support kids in special needs have if any? I mean, it sounds like there's some general things like hall monitors, that's gonna affect all the kids, but are there any, you have mandates, so I didn't know if that affected them at all.
Yes, so I can speak to the other part. I got a little derailed, but basically with the MTS pyramid, what happens when you start pulling back those supports, those general education supports, is that the pyramid actually can inadvertently flip so that a lot of students end up looking like they need additional services and kind of live in that tier 3. And that's the big concern when you start pulling away. So everyone here has been talking about what happens. I mean, I love that example, the party example, by the way. I thought that was perfect. What happens when you start to pull away staff or you pull away services is that, so MTSS really services advanced learners, general education, special ed students. So what happens is there's almost a cascade into people kind of questioning more, does that student need more specialized services? Because the student that was maybe caught in first grade with that reading assessment, without all of those paras, without those 9 paras at the kindergarten level, the concern would be that student might get missed. And that student now in 7th grade in a middle school looks a lot different if you can't read sitting in a classroom for 6.5 hours. So the concern and why it was a really valuable and important conversation to start having for me, especially as someone who works in a therapeutic day school, is that students should be in their home environment. And it's really important to make sure that we keep these services intact so that more and more students, so that everyone stays in the least restrictive setting possible.
So we've only touched the surface of all the supports we do. You know, a lot of the supports we do are built into our instructional strategies. We're a big proponent of universal design for learning. We are very involved with the Department of Ed's inclusive practices model. It's one of our core models. We've accepted that every classroom should be an inclusion classroom with the supports that kids need. We have a big district curriculum accommodation plan that we're now updating actually to reflect the changes in technology. But special education is both a federal and state mandate. We cannot cut it. All right, and even our federal grant requires what's called a maintenance of effort. And if you drop below your maintenance of effort level, they will come in and ask you why and force you to go back up to it. So there's a level of protection there on special ed services. But what Sheila has pointed out is what happens is the student that we were giving accommodations to or extra help to or finding other ways to access learning and express learning loses those and now begins to look like he or she needs to be evaluated for special ed. So now your special education numbers begin to rise. Because that's a federal and state mandate, it has to be provided. Those bills have to be paid, so to speak. So if all of a sudden I go from needing, you know, let's say 5 special ed teachers in a building and now I need 6, well, and I have no place to take it, it comes out of general ed and it impacts general ed.
I saw another hand in the back. Oh, well, I saw another hand over here, though. I just want to. Okay, well, that's beautiful how that worked out. Okay, you're on.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. So my question is related to student support, but also a little bigger picture. Just with the complexity of college admissions and that whole landscape, but also the increase in mental health issues in youth, both general ed and special ed, could you speak to the current level of support that we have and just what would be gained or lost by each of the budget proposals under A and B?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
A couple of things here. So, a few years ago, Ms. White Lambright, who's the Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel Services, and I did a little bit budget finagling, and we added another mental health specialist to the high school, middle school campus, so that we now have 4 mental health specialists at the high school, middle school campus. We also have 5 guidance counselors, they are no longer guidance counselors, they are 4 school counselors and a director at the high school and 3 school counselors at the middle school. We've added, I'm looking at Donna, we've added a social worker to the ECC, and then we have another 4 social workers, psychologists that are assigned around the city. Budget A would add another guidance counselor at the school counselor at the high school. There is a ratio that is best practice. It's about 250 to 1, so that would be added. And would add 2 more social workers for the elementary schools. What we have been lucky about is we have partnered with Melrose Alliance Against Violence for the past many years, and we're in our second grant with them, and this grant got us 2 trauma counselors, 2 part-time trauma counselors at the elementary. But that's a grant. We got about 3 years left on the grant, and that's not sustainable. I think what it is hard for people to understand is when we talk about changes in education, you also have to talk about changes in our population and our children. Our kids are not who we are. Many of them have anxiety. Many of them have other mental health diagnoses. We have an increase with our children on the autism spectrum, who often come with some other issues around behavior. We have an increasing number of traumatized children in the district. Those of you who are elementary school parents may be familiar with some of the cases that we're dealing with at your particular elementary school. And this is through nobody's fault. Nobody's done anything wrong. It's just a change, a shift we are seeing in the general population. And it's becoming quite demanding on all of us. Our teachers need more support around it. Obviously, the children need more direct support. And it is a changing element in education. When Sheila talks about the whole child, she is being very tactful. We see a number of challenges in the mental health field played out in schools. The interesting thing about special education is it's relieved a lot of other agencies of their responsibilities. In the 55 years of special education, 1975 was the federal law, public health agencies and medical facilities have realized that the way the law is written, that we are responsible for children from 3 to 22, or until they take a diploma, or if they take a diploma at 18, if they don't until 22, means we also have to provide services. And so a lot of times that gets shifted to us. So I always tell the story about when I was a SPED director. A couple of systems ago, on a little piece of green prescription paper, I got, please give Johnny physical therapy. He does not run fast. Okay? You know, it did not happen, believe me. That's not an educational need. And that is the definition of special education, is what is the educational need. But if a child is having mental health issues and cannot access the curriculum and cannot learn, that is our responsibility to provide services. And that is a huge shift we're seeing. If you're not familiar with the statistics now is 20% of our young people will have a mental health, 30% now? Sheila's correcting me. 32% of our children will have a mental health challenge before they reach adulthood. And I've been in this field a very, very long time, and we've had this conversation. We have great conversations because it gives me a chance to dabble in special ed again. And we're seeing diagnoses that when I first started out, I didn't see until a child was 17, 18 years old. We're now seeing in 6 and 7 years old. And that has shifted our whole thinking and our whole approach to many things we do.
Thank you for that. I am going to move us on to an entirely new topic. I'm sure that there's questions again that you have. If we didn't get your question, I apologize. We've just got about 20 minutes left. And this next one is something that has come up a lot, and that's around the idea of teacher and administration retention and compensation. So a couple of questions, again, verbatim, that were collected from the registration forms. And I'm going to direct this to you, Superintendent Tamor. Huh?
I want to make sure Amy has her.
I'll go quick. Yeah. Yeah, there are a couple more. So this and also the parent role are the two last kind of big topics that we need to cover off on. So as parents, we've all experienced the loss of great teachers and administrators on occasion. Is this a trend? Does it happen in Melrose more often than in comparable communities? And let me just ask the second question too, because I think they're tied together. What are the factors that are resulting in departures? Compensation is part of it, no doubt, but what are the other levers that we're using to try and keep our best teachers in the district?
So I don't know where to begin.
Thank you. Let me begin a little bit differently to something Matt said. One of the things that we have tried to do is, because we run thin, we've tried to build out career pathways for our staff so that entices them to stay. I only have 5 directors. I have a humanities director that does social studies and English. I have GLAM, which is Global Languages, Art and Music. I have the AD/Phys Ed Wellness. I have STEM, who does science, technology, engineering, math. And I have guidance director. And we eliminated the separate directors for English, social studies, so that's been combined, STEM was combined, art and music was totally eliminated. And one of the things that we did was we created this position, content facilitators, to give staff who were interested in putting a toe in the administrative water a chance to have some experience doing some mid-level administrative work for a stipend. We also have elementary instructional leaders, a similar experience, and middle school team leaders. All of these are ways that you build pathways for people who may want to become an administrator someday and hopefully keep them in district. All that's at stake here. The conversation about why people leave is difficult. Yes, in some cases it's money. In other cases, it's other reasons. I think it's sometimes difficult for people to understand that this is a profession like any other profession, and people don't necessarily come at 22 and retire at 55. People have a right to pursue their personal and professional careers as they see fit, for whatever reason. Sometimes we lose somebody, quite frankly, because they're not a good fit, and it's time for them to go find a better fit. Sometimes we lose people because they're beginning families and they make choices about what the family priorities are, whether it's to stay home or because a spouse gets transferred and somebody's got to make the choice who gives up what. I've lost a handful of people over the years, at least 1 or 2 a year because of housing. This is an expensive area to buy housing. I find that I lose people to southern New Hampshire, and I have to think about my math, southeast Massachusetts. And then the commute becomes, too difficult, especially if you have babies in daycare and everything else that you have to juggle. And sometimes I lose teachers for money. And the money conversation is an interesting one because I know there's been some back and forth in the public. So, step and lane is very difficult to explain. It's not clean. There is no state system, and those of you who come from states where the state decides what the pay is, that's not how it goes in Massachusetts. We have 10 steps. How many lanes? 8 or 9 lanes. There is no formula. So some districts have 15 steps and 10 lanes, and some districts have 12 steps and 6 lanes, or whatever it may be. And what teachers do is they go up steps every year, and finally, when you get to the top step, you don't get any more money on that lane. But you can move lanes, and when you move lanes, you get more money. And it varies from town to town. And yeah, there are points in our steps and lanes where we're not that far off from other districts. But where we are lagging is for our people at the top of the scale. So here's the scenario I paint for myself, and I'm going to tell you quite frankly, my youngest daughter and my son-in-law are both teachers, not here, and we've had these conversations. They have a house, 2 babies, and they're still paying off college loans. There comes a point where you say, all right, I'm in year 5 or 6, and if I don't make a move now, I'm never going to get to make a move. And I have to think about my future. I have to think about my mortgage. I have to think about college eventually for my kids. I have to think about my retirement. The way retirement works for teachers is the average of your best 3 years. If you've done the whole kit and caboodle, you get 80%. I'm not getting into an argument with anybody about the pension system. All right, but that's what, but that's how you begin to think when you get to a certain point. And there are grave differences. You can top out in Melrose at $79,000. There are districts you can top out at $99,000. Okay, and higher. I just saw an article, don't ask me where, I read too many Twitters, and where they named the 11 districts in the country in which teachers can make 6 figures. Concord Kyle was one of them. I lost 2 teachers to Concord Kyle this fall. Okay? And one of them, young teacher, has babies, the whole 9 yards. This week I'm losing a teacher to where, Patty? Lexington? Lexington. Okay, I want you to think of the date, March 1st. It's a $14,000 difference. And she came to talk, and she said, I'm so sorry, but my child is a junior in high school, and I have to do this. And Patty and I finagled and thought about it, and could we match it, and I can't match it, I'm bound by a contract. And she is leaving. But it's not just about teacher retention, it's about teacher attraction, recruitment. I've had the other side of the coin. I remember vividly, we needed a physics teacher, a young man in my office. The screening and interviewing team loved him, sent him up to me. First thing he says to me is, Mrs. Taymor, I need $62,000 a year. The next thing I said to him is, I wish you a lot of luck in your search. Okay? Because I couldn't match it. He was already making 60 where he was. Why was he going to come to me for less money at the next step up? So that's part of what it's about. It's about teacher recruitment. It's about teacher retention. It's about understanding how this works in Massachusetts.
I'm looking at the time. It's we've got 10 minutes. I'm sure there's a question about compensation and retention. I want to give a chance to someone who hasn't had a chance to chime in. Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll ask you now, but I was going to ask you where I was going to.
Hold on just a second.
Hi, my question was going to be regarding the budget and how the Melrose School offsets accounts getting decreased by $1 million, which is, I guess, how we come up with Budget A and Budget B. And the city reducing its contribution from this fiscal year, I think it was 4.2%, and in Budget A and B, it's, Budget B, it's 2%. Budget A, my understanding is just going to be the override amount, not in addition to the 2%. That's what I thought we should be talking more about tonight, rather than just A and B, because it really doesn't make sense unless we understand the assumptions behind that. But I did want to talk a little bit about teachers' pay. I do see the point with the senior teachers, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going by the agenda package I saw at the January 29th school committee meeting, that 75% of the teachers have been with the district less than 10 years, and will also be with the district less than 10 years in 2020 and 2021. So I guess with that being said, the override amount that's allocated to salary increases for all school employees is $1.85 million, which represents 35% of the override. Is there a calculation, is there something that I can see how that amount was calculated, the $1.85 million?
It was calculated off of an assumption of between 3 and 3.5% increase on the labor cost. That's what I believe it was calculated off of. I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that in 10 years, 75% of our teachers will still be here, have under 10 years experience, is what I'm trying to wrap my head around.
No, I think I said 75%, from the school agenda package, 75% of the teachers have been with the district less than 10 years. And what I mean by that is they haven't exceeded their top step yet.
No, they haven't, but we only go up to 10 steps.
No, I get that. We only go up to 10 steps, but they haven't reached that point yet. So let's say that they're not at the top of the step next year. They're not at the top of the step in 2020 or 21. So my question is, how is the $1.85 million being applied? And I guess you answered that. You said between 3 and 3.5%.
I feel like some of this might be lost on, I don't know if anyone else feels really confused right now.
What do you mean?
And I'm not sure, Cindy, if you can help, or if you can help just really pinpoint your question.
I think it's an offline conversation.
It feels like there's a lot of information that maybe is getting lost on the benefit of making us all feel educated. Do you have one very specific question to ask? And Cindy, maybe you can answer that?
Well, I think she answered. Is there something out there that shows how the $1.85 million was calculated? And you're saying it was based upon 3% of the payroll?
It's not just salary increases, Rich. There's 7 new positions included there?
No, he's talking, no, the new positions are accounted for, Mary, in the bulk of the override money. There's 28.5 positions being requested as well. That's where the bulk of the money's going. But then there's also money to make us more competitive salary-wise. You know, again, when you talk about, it's not just teachers. So when you want to talk about retention and recruitment, it's no secret in the district. I lost one principal to another district who's paying her $50,000 more than I could. My middle school principal left to become an assistant superintendent, which is a career path that he's pursuing, and I respect his right to pursue. He is currently making more than both my assistant superintendents, and he had this much experience to go into that position, and they've been with us many years. Those are some of the issues. I had one principal who came to me and took a $10,000 cut to come to us. So again, it's not just about retention, it's also about recruitment. And some of that money is to address not only that. Our paraprofessionals are among the lowest paid in the area. It really is a problem. We can't get paras. You can make more at McDonald's than you can working as a para in Melrose. A lot of that 1.8 that the gentleman is referencing is also about rectifying salaries for some of our other employees. For those of you who have children who do get special education vans or transportation services, you know that we're down at least one driver, if not two. Again, we put ads on Craigslist. in the newspaper. We are not paying competitive wages in even some of our most low-level jobs. And part of that money in this override request goes to those people. Not everything is meant for the teachers, as much as I want to give them as much as we could.
So I just want to be mindful of the time. We have 5 minutes, and I know, Amy, you had this whole long plan to share something. I'd love just a quick statement. I know that there's other questions around retention and compensation. I don't think we're going to get to them all tonight. And I want to give Amy a fair shot at what she was going to be speaking to, and then I also know that Karen and Kim want to just close out the evening. So yeah, all of that's going to happen in 5 minutes. But Amy, just to speak to your role as a parent volunteer over the last, I think it was like, what, 12, 13, 14 years in the school
I'm
system?
not that old. 8. My kids have been in the school for 8 years.
So just quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, and I apologize that you're getting squeezed so much, but talk about the changes you're seeing, because it's always been on the shoulders of parents to volunteer.
I'm also on the bridge board, and last year we did an infographic, and this year we updated it. And you know, even I'm sort of surprised to see the things that volunteers are doing and PTOs are fundraising for. We logged 13,700 registered volunteer hours, and that would equate to $425,000 in donated volunteer time based on the value of a volunteer hour.
And are you seeing that trend change over time?
We are seeing an increase in classrooms and students, and our number of volunteers are remaining flat. So we're not getting more volunteers, but we're getting more need. We're getting more asks. PTOs are funding the educational enrichment assemblies, field trip buses, classroom subscriptions and supplies, Chromebook carts, playground equipment upgrades, teacher lounge improvements, and a new trend is alternative seating for the classrooms. So a lot of PTOs are adding that to their budgets.
What is alternative seating?
It's like bouncy chairs or like rubber bands to flick with your feet, things for kids who can't sit still.
Gotcha.
In the 2017 fiscal year, collectively, the 5 elementary PTOs, ECC is not under PTO Inc., they're separate, so for the 5 elementary school PTOs, raised $422,000 and funded $385,000 of that for the staff and the students in the schools. And that was an increase of $135,000 from the year before. So the ask is more and more, and it's just not sustainable. One of the areas where we have the biggest concern is the school libraries, which is all parent run and volunteered. And the coordinators are spending anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week, and then hundreds of hours over the course of the year for the volunteers to work in the library. That was a real area of concern when I talked to the different PTOs. And actually the number of volunteers that we have registered for the library decreased from last year to this year, down by 70 people. And we think the reason for that is we have more parent working families, and people aren't able to come during the day and help volunteer.
So any just final closing thoughts, Amy, for like another 20 seconds, and then I want to turn it over to Karen so we can get everybody out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I would basically just say that the volunteers and the families are really covering a gap, and it's increased over the years, and it's just not sustainable, just like grants aren't sustainable. And it also creates inequity among the schools, because some schools can raise more and have more parents to draw from than the other schools. So, you know, some school libraries, the kids might go once a week, some kids go once a month. Some schools can afford $5,000 in alternative seating, some schools maybe $1,000. So
then it starts to just create inequity among the schools too.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you. And again, apologize that we ran out of time. So we have a minute. Think you can do your closing remarks in a minute?
I could do it in 30 seconds.
There you
Everybody
go.
looks like
All
they're
right.
ready to go. I'm Karen Blackburn. I'm a member of the Melrose Education Foundation Board. And I just want to say first thank you to our panelists tonight. Thank you to Beth. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there are many educators in the room tonight. Can you just raise your hand? Thank you all for coming. And we really just want to thank all of you for coming to listen, to engage in the conversation. It's a really important conversation. We need to know what's going on in our schools. And we have a couple of things that we want you to do. There's going to be a survey sent out to you tomorrow. Part of our mandate is to convene, and that's what we did today. So fill out the survey, tell us how we did, tell us what else you want us to convene about. This is all being videotaped, and it's going to be available early next week. So you can re-watch it in case you didn't hear a question. More importantly, share it. Share it with your neighbor, your friend, your colleague, the stranger down the street who you just want to randomly talk to. We are also going to be sending out a short summary of what happened tonight sometime next week. So if you need a couple of bullets to share with someone and explain like what you did tonight, we'll provide that to you. So again, just a really deep appreciation to all of you for being engaged. We hope you stay engaged, ask questions, come to our website if there's some resources that you're looking for, because we have all the standard materials, data from the city. We're here to present just the facts. And so I hope that you got that tonight. So thank you.
How do we present the questions that we didn't get to ask?
Good question. The survey, I believe there'll be a mechanism for you to send questions. You can also feel free just to email us at info@melroseedfoundation.org. Send the questions because we'll be able to either direct you to where to get the answers. We'll probably be able to collate a number of the questions together and maybe put out a supplemental summary.
What was the email again, please?
info@melroseedfoundation.org.
And you can answer questions about fund appropriations?
If we can't answer the questions, we will provide you to where you need to go to get the answers.
Would this be being one of the more important overrides as we've attempted to do here in the 50 years that I've lived here in Melrose? I was just wondering whether or not the parents can get involved to make sure that the peers in the schools are registered to vote, will come out to vote on that day, make a really big push. I'm actually working with the city with the elderly complexes, those people who do not own property, trying to get them to come on our side so that they can help us and get to the votes that we need to make this override pass. But I think that the parents are so busy too. Half of them haven't even signed up to vote. They sometimes think it's, they don't have time to do it. But this is a very critical override vote that we're taking this year, and I'm hoping that everybody gets into the throes of, just making sure that this is so important to this community, that everybody gets out there to vote.
So good reminder. Again, we're not here to say we're on one side of the fence or the other, but a good reminder to vote and register to vote. So with that, I think we are concluding the evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight.